Well, my name's Kyle Larson. I'm a contributor for the Undroppables. Um, to call me an expert is not true whatsoever, but I try my. So, yeah, we'll start with the questions. Um, how do you see touches and snaps being distributed in the Indianapolis backfield? I have Indy. I have 235 carries for Taylor, 129 for Mac, and then 23 targets for Taylor, 30 for Mack, and 38 for Hines. So Taylor leads, Mack takes some, and then Hines takes most receiving work, but not the majority. I don't think any of them are going to do very much as a pass catcher. Hines would be the best. Why is JT so low? I love him in Dynasty. He's my RB1 rookie. He's my rookie number one over in non-superflex leagues. But just that 1 year Mac and 1 year getting used to the NFL is gonna not be generous to him. I don't think I mean, being an RB1 is definitely in his range of outcomes for this rookie year. But I just don't see it. Um, you have Tua as QB 20. What week do you see him starting? Yeah, so that's a good question. And it's something I didn't really write down, but my quarterbacks are like points per game, not really points on the season, because I didn't want to have to bother predict how many games like Foles and Trubisky both play and how many games Fitzpatrick and Tua both play, or Herbert and Taylor. Um, they got bumped down a little bit in the rankings because they weren't going to play the whole season, but I didn't take into account the amount of games. If I had to guess what week I see Tua starting, um, whenever Fitzpatrick blows a game, it's the easy answer. Um, and I think it's a possibility that Tua plays the entire season, just because he does seem to be very already. But we never know. It is full PPR. I don't know if that was mentioned anywhere, but it is full PPR. I'm is the projection of Eckler playing with Herbert? No. If I had to guess, Tyrod plays at least 4, maybe more. Last season, Rivers checked down to Eckler a ton like he usually does. I don't know if Tyrod has the same inclination, but I've heard from a few people that Herbert liked to check down to running back. Yeah, Herbert ran a ton of screen passes at Oregon. It was like 25% of all passes were screens. So, and quarterbacks in general just check down quite a bit. They they're not ready yet to read defenses at an NFL level sometimes. Um, yeah, he'll definitely get a bump in targets for me when Herbert starts playing compared to Tyrod, but I still think that the bump from Rivers to Tyrod isn't going to be as bad as a lot of people say it is. I think Eckler's still going to get the targets just because he is so good as a pass catcher. And like anything he loses in passing volume, I think he's going to gain in rushing volume because there's no Melvin Gordon there. And while he is going to split rushing touches with Kelly and Jackson, neither of those guys are like as good as Gordon. So I think he's going to get more rushing attempts than he would have if he would still had Melvin Gordon around. Touches divided in the Dolphins backfield. I can pull that up as well. Miami. 200 rushes for Howard, 20 targets for Howard, 90 rushes, 40 targets for Breida. I actually like Jordan Howard. just because he's being drafted so late. I think he's a steal at his current ADP because you can get solid play, solid flex play, and possibly like a RB2 if Breida gets hurt or anything. And yeah, and you can draft him as like the RB30 or something, or even like worse than that sometimes. I've seen like Pollard go before Jordan Howard, and it's just ridiculous that he's being so undervalued. I have pretty much the entire Rams offense rated very low. That's true. You seem to be punting the entire backfield. That's true as well. The Rams defense is mediocre. I don't think it's a massive downgrade across the board for the Rams offense. Um, to me, Goff is just kind of like a stream quarterback in one QB league. You won't want to start him every week, but yeah, he's in like a tier with Locke and Haskins and Cousins and guys that I want to draft in a one quarterback league. Take if they had a good a bad defense they're playing against that week, or my guy had a bye or anything. Um, but I'm not sure I'm necessarily that down on the Rams offense. I see them being kind of similar to what they did last year, but I'm not sure they're going to have very much rushing efficiency with that bad offensive line. And then you talked about Cup and Woods. I actually really like both of them, even though my projections don't show that. I think they both have like high wide receiver 2 upside, even wide receiver 1 upside. But I did project Reynolds to play really well, and that kind of is like the linchpin on whether or not they're great or if they're just solid players. If Reynolds is okay and really doesn't take anything from what Cooks is leaving, then Woods and Cup will be really good, especially if they go back to more 11 personnel. But that's a kind of a hard thing to predict. McVay obviously likes 11 more, but those 2 tight ends on the field in 12 really helped them block at the end of last. Yeah. So if they play a lot of 12, then Cup and Woods will be decent, but they won't be great, especially if Reynolds and Van are good. If Reynolds and Van play well, then Cup and Woods are kind of not going to be as good as they were last year, but they'll still be solid players. Next question is, where do you think the tier break is for reliable production from the tight end position? Who is the last tight end who can be counted on as a weekly starter? Based on my projection, I would say well, there's guys that I have in that tier that I wouldn't want as my weekly starter, but that's a hard question because right now I have 7 is Hurst and 11 is, and they are separated by 7. So really, I guess the I would the top 5 of Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, and Waller as a guy that I'm playing matchup independent, and Waller is kind of teetering as to whether or not I do that. I definitely would want 2 tight ends at least, or just stream a second one if I was playing anybody below Waller as my tight end in read. But if this is like a dynasty league and you have to, and then not gonna have a reliable tight end streaming options, I'd be comfortable starting the top 11 tight ends that I have week to week. So that'd be Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller, Jonnu, Hurst, Henry, Jarwin, Doyle, and Fant. I think the top 8, Hurst, Henry, Jonnu, and the top 5 are going to be really good. And those guys could any of those guys could really explode for a great week and kind of lead your team, give you a win. But then Jarwin and Jarwin and Doyle are just going to be consistent, and they're just going to be consistently around the 10th tight end, which I'm not sure is what you really want from a week to week starter, but they're going to be good at basically. Why do you rank so high? He's efficient. I think he's going to have more touches than he had last year. But I really have to Eckler over Zeke because I can get Eckler in the second round if I draft Zeke in the first. No, I probably would not draft Eckler in the first at this point because if you can get him in the second, why draft him in the first? If his ADP climbs into the first, I would take him over Zeke. Well, I would take him over Zeke in PPR. Maybe I would take him over Zeke in PPR Dynasty, but I would probably take Zeke in redraft just because Zeke's a little older and has more wear on his tires. But Zeke's going to be consistent and he's going to be good, just like he has been his entire career. Breakout quarterback to target late this year. That's a hard question because there's possibilities, but I don't have anybody technically in mind. I think Teddy Bridgewater is a good guy you could get late because he has the best pass catching running back in the NFL. He has DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson, which is just a great trio of wide receivers. And Ian Thomas isn't bad, and he has Joe Brady and Matt Rule has his character. You don't think those guys are going to throw it around? I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, I really like Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's going to be pretty good. He's going to get a lot of volume, and he's going to have really good options to throw. And then I'm cutting in and out. Oh, well, that's can't really do anything about that because I don't have very great Wi-Fi right here. Okay, I guess we'll keep going then. Yeah, so we're back on breakout quarterbacks. Like I said, I like Teddy Bridgewater. I think he could be really good. I think Haskins has a high ceiling. He's somebody else you could draft late. I have him as quarterback 25, but I think his ceiling is much higher than that. So I wouldn't draft him I wouldn't feel great about drafting him, but he's somebody that I'd look out for to possibly be really good. And then Minshew, I like Minshew. Minshew is in a prove it year basically. He's got to do well if he wants to keep that job. And I think he actually is a pretty good quarterback. So those 3 guys would probably be the guys I would draft late just to take a flyer on. I'm not even sure if I'd do that in redraft because I just stream and redraft. But yeah, Dobbins. I have Dobbins is 24, Ingram is 40. How early are you expecting Dobbins to take over the back? The general opinion that you're hearing is that he won't take over until next. So the biggest thing I have about Dobbins over Ingram is passing work. Dobbins gets more passing work off the bat, and obviously that's more valuable in PPR. Actually have almost an even split in carry, and then just 10, 15 more targets. So really, I think both are decent options for next. Because Mark Ingram will could be just a little worse than he was last year, which is pretty deep. Noah Fant is ranked higher than Austin Hooper. Do you believe that is attributed more towards Fant improving or Hooper being on a worse team / new head coach? I think both of those are true, and both of those can be attributed to that. But I'd probably say that it has more to do with Hooper than it does Fant, because Fant was good last year, and we all know Fant's young, and that he'll probably get and better as he progresses. So that was kind of to be expected. Hooper going to Cleveland, this is not good at all for him, because now he's competing with Odell and Jarvis and Njoku and um, Kareem Hunt. They have more pass catching options than Atlanta, just barely, but they also throw like 100 less passes than Atlanta. So I'm not sure it's not a great landing spot for fantasy whatsoever. I think it makes the Browns a good bit better, but it doesn't help Hooper in fantasy. Um, so yeah, being on the team with less possible targets in general, and the new head coach will even make it less targets the Cleveland Browns had last year. With the new coaching staff in Cleveland looking to be more run-heavy, why do you have Chubb dropping 8-19 this year? So when I posted this on Twitter, this was like the most, and it's a hard question to answer because I'm not sure I like work. But yeah, I think he could. I kind of have him. If I were to split him into tiers, I would have a tier break right after Mixon at 14, and then all the way down to like Gurley, and Chubb could easily lead that tier and easily break into the RB1 because they are going to run the ball a lot with Stefanski. So it's totally a possibility that they run a ton and he just gets a ton of carries. In PPR, he's just not going to have targets. He's going to, because obviously it's a new coaching staff, so we can't trust last year's data. But, Hunt just killed his target share last year. And I think while Chubb is a really great back, and his ceiling is obviously one of the top rushers in the league, just like it was last year, sharing a backfield with another really good running back is never a good thing. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about Chubb, Are we assuming Gronk is coming in for the star appeal more than utilization? Notice he was low. I think he'll be utilized, and I think he is star appeal for sure. But I don't see him being great because whenever he was like the recent seasons where he was really good with the Patriots, if I remember correctly, like they had Edelman and then like decent wide receivers at best behind Edelman. In Tampa Bay, you have Evans and Godwin, and that's not even bringing in like OJ Howard and Cameron Brate. I don't think any of those tight ends are going to be very useful, just because I think they're going to all split the snaps and targets. Because OJ Howard is like incredibly athletic and could have an insane ceiling even if he hasn't reached it yet. And I don't know. It's a hard question because Gronk is pretty good. Or Gronk is the best tight end of all, but he hasn't played any in like 2 years, and he has those back issues. I wouldn't trust him in fantasy, especially in dynasty, because I don't think you're going to get more than 1 year, more than 2 years at max with him, and I don't think he's going to be special. So Godwin's at 2, Evans considerably lower. You expect Evans' struggles to continue, or Godwin featured more? A little bit of both. It's in history and fantasy, it's insanely crazy to have 2 players on the same team repeat as top 12 receivers in back-to-back years. I think Godwin does more featured due to Brady than he was with Jameis. And also, I think they just pass less because I think the defense is actually really good, but they'll have less interceptions and they'll fall behind a lot less, and the game script will be better for them, and so they won't have to throw the ball all over like they did with Jameis. So I think they'll just have less targets to go around in general, and then a lot of those will be taken from Evans because Evans is a deep threat. They're going to throw it to them when they're behind, and I just don't think they're going to be behind as much. Is really the thing for Evans. I still think he's good. After him, I have quite a few that I've acquired, but I'm not sure he's going to be elite. But yeah, he's an incredible player, so I'm happy to have him on. If recommending handcuffs for injuries, and one do you consider the most important? Rojo and Vaughn, JT Mack, Eckler and Kelly, Ingram and Dobbin, or another I'm probably missing. The most important handcuff. Well, that's a hard. Let's see. I think the most important handcuff for redraft, I think the player you want to handcuff the most, if you have him, is Dave Johnson. Because Duke's not a bad player, and David Johnson is a lot more injury prone than anyone else, I think, who will be good. In Dynasty, I'm not sure I want Rojo and Vaughn, especially if they're splitting. JT and Mac, I would gladly have both of them, but I don't think Mac's gonna do anything. I don't think JT's gonna get. I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but I would take both JT and Mac if I could, and both Ingram and Dobbins if I could, because I think there's possibilities that Mac or Ingram end up in a better committee for them later. And I think I guess Ingram would be the most important, because Ingram is going to have the best season this year out of those guys. Probably. Le'Veon still maintaining an elite rank. Do you worry about Gase's hate and arrival of Gore? I don't worry about Frank Gore. That's one of my. I think that's a rule now. Like, he's gonna be there, but I don't worry about him too much. I think what happened with Gore in Buffalo was strictly due to Singletary being a rookie. I don't think Gore is actually gonna take that many attempts. For me, Le'Veon maintaining that elite rank and even getting better than he was last year has to do with that improved offensive line, because they basically have 5 new starters. They're going to have Becton and a handful of guys they signed in free agency. I think that's really going to help him. I think he's still going to get the attempts and the targets that he got last year, which leaves him up near like 300 touches, which is really good for running back. It's rare that you see a running back. No, it's actually impossible that you see a running back with over 300 touches and he doesn't end up as an RB1. I think I read that on Twitter earlier today. So yeah, the Le'Veon argument for me is just completely you're chasing touches, and that's completely fine because Le'Veon is a good player, or at least a decent player now. I know Cooks is no nuke, but do you think Fuller or Cooks is worth more value at their respective ADPs? At their ADPs, Fuller is the obvious answer if he stays healthy, but because of his injury risk, I'd rather have Cooks. The Wentz rank raised your eyebrows. The addition of wide receivers was enough to convince this in the bounce back. This is the bounce back year. A little bit. I think Wentz is a really good quarterback. He almost won MVP before he got hurt. He should have won. He would have won MVP if he didn't get hurt. And Rager and Goodwin and even Hightower and Watkins are improvements over Nelson Aguilar. So yeah, because he was good last year too, and he'll just be even better. He's a great dynasty quarterback for me, definitely too. The stalemate between the Cowboys and Dak on his next contract, even if his franchise tag is unsigned, there's a realistic chance Andy Dalton will be the starter from week 1. Where would this put Dalton in the quarterback rankings if he were to start week 1? And how will this new quarterback affect the other offensive players for the Cowboys? Well, one, I don't think Andy Dalton is as good as Dak Prescott. So, pretty much every player on the offense would be a little worse, except maybe I could see Zeke getting even better just because he'd probably run the ball a little more with Andy Dalton rather than Dak. Um, if I had to choose where to put Andy Dalton in the Cowboys offense as a fantasy quarterback, probably just outside QB1, like probably just outside a QB1, not the QB1. Like he'll be good just because you know that team is stacked with weapons, but he's not as accurate as Dak. I would like Andy Dalton a lot if he was starting for the Cowboys. Why so high on Johnny Smith over guys like Henry, Ingram, Cooper, Cook, who have proven they can produce? Um, so Johnny's incredibly athletic and just a good tight end. He's just been young, and he's been getting better and better as Walker has been starting. And Walker's been hurt a lot, so Johnny's got to play a bit. But still, yeah, I think Johnny will just be really good just because he's gonna have a ton of targets because those Tajay Sharp targets have to go somewhere, and I think he's gonna be the second wide receiver, the second receiver in general on the team, behind Brown, of course. And Tannehill's been working out with him. Take that for what you will. I don't think it's huge for him, but the Twitter hype machine knows no stops. Yeah, I just like Johnny because he's athletic and he's gonna have a high amount of targets. And I think he's a good player. Oh, why do I like him over Henry, Ingram, Hooper, and Cook? Henry and Ingram because of injuries. Cook because of Emmanuel Sanders mostly, and he was incredibly touchdown dependent in that late season run he had last year, and he's just getting older and he's not going to get better. Hooper because of why is Josh Allen QB6 last year down at 14 after adding the best wide receiver he's ever had? It's a good question. Let me open up quarterbacks. So Josh Allen, I don't think it's about Josh Allen getting worse for me. It's about other quarterbacks behind him and I think guys like Breeze would have ended up above him if Breeze had played the full season. I think Matt Ryan's going to be better this year. Tom Brady's going to be better this year than they were last year. Tannehill, if he had played the whole season last year, would have been better than Josh Allen. Matthew Stafford would have been better than Josh Allen if he had played the entire season. It's really not indicative of Josh Allen. It's really indicative of everyone else. I still like Josh Allen, even though I think he's I wouldn't trust him in Dynasty because I'm not sure he keeps. It's a higher possibility for him than anyone you draft around him that he loses his job. So that's kind of the worry for me because he has that rushing floor that makes him great in fantasy, but like that kind of gives us rose-colored glasses because he scores a lot of fantasy points because of his rushing, but his passing really is just like okay. And the Bills have a great roster now, and I worry that if they can't win with Allen, that he'll get replaced soon just because they feel like they have this great roster and they're not winning games even though they have Allen. Chris Herndon is ranked awfully high compared to Ryan Griffin. Do you believe the latter is going to lose playing time, assuming the former is healthy? I think Herndon is better than Griffin. He's more athletic and a better receiver. I still think you have to have Griffin if you want draft Herndon. I want to draft Herndon and redraft, but I take him in Dynasty, especially because his ADP is so low. But I take Griffin like 4 rounds later, or whenever I can get. Interesting to see the Giants wide receiver core ranked so closely together. Who do you believe offers the most upside? The most upside is Darius Slay. We know what we're getting with the other two. But we don't know if Slayton is as good is has reached his full potential or not. So the most upside is Slayton. Why so low on Rivers? I don't think the Colts are going to pass a lot, and Rivers is declining. Why so low on Rivers with a new offense behind a better O-line, while also reunited with Reich and Sirianni? If the receiving core struggles last year was part of it, do you consider Grow as wide receiver coach in Indian upgrade over the wide receiver coach? That's fine. I can't tell you about Grow. I don't know much about wide receiver coaching. But I'll take your word for it that he's an upgrade. It's quite possible. The wide receiver core in Indy is good, but they're not as good as what he had in the Chargers with like Keenan and Mike Will and Hunter Henry. I still like Ty. I think Ty is a great value actually for being drafted and what you can trade for him, because I think he'll be pretty good next year. But yeah, for Rivers, it's just volume. I just don't think he's going to get the volume that he got with the Chargers because the Colts defense is better. Well, the Chargers defense is better than the Colts, but the Chargers defense was hurt last year and he had a lot of volume. And they always were in position they had to come back late, and he got a lot of times. And then I see them running the ball a lot more. How do you like Akers? 200 upside in full PPR, and how would you rank him compared to the running back from this class? Dynasty upside in full PPR, probably. It's in his range of outcomes. He just has to win the backfield completely. He has to believe. He has to lead back to get 200 points, and he has to be back convincingly. Not like how Jordan Howard was the lead back in Philly last year. He has to be the lead back like Gurley was. But I think it's possible. How would you rank him compared to the other running backs from this class? Akers is my RB4. I like Taylor, CEH, and Dobbins over Akers, and that's it. Do you see AJ Brown playing much better than his 13th ranking for wide receivers? The rookies this year are going to be interesting to see. The rookies from last year are going to be interesting to see this year. Yeah, that's true. AJ Brown definitely has a ceiling that's higher than 13. He's incredibly efficient and just doesn't have the targets because they're gonna run that offense through Derrick Henry. So yeah, that's pretty much my only knock on AJ Brown is he doesn't have the targets. He doesn't have the volume to be elite like somebody like Michael Thomas does or Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin even. About Marquise Brown, Debo, Metcalf, McLaurin, and Hurd. Yeah, those guys are going to be really interesting to see for sure. It'll be fun to watch Marquise Brown fully healthy if he is full. I think he can do really, really good things if he's fully healthy. Yeah, that's really all I want to talk about there. I like Hurd too. I like Hurd as a late round dart thrower. Just you can get him really late, and we just don't know what we have in him yet. They spent a good draft capital on him, and it seemed to be good in the preseason when he did play. He had, if I remember correctly, he had like 3 targets and 2 touchdowns. So it's definitely a possibility that Hurd is really good. We just don't. Why is Nick Chubb ranked so? Like I said, I'm not sure I even agree with the Chubb ranking, but yeah, his ceiling isn't just as high as it was last year. It just depends on just how many rush attempts they have as a whole. I think maybe in my predictions I might have put, or it's a good possibility that I put not enough carries for the Browns in general when I split them between Chubb and Hunt. So yeah, I like Chubb still. I just especially in Dynasty because he'd just be back to lead the complete lead next year. What are your thoughts on Juju in full PPR? Am I crazy to think he can finish as a top 12 receiver? I don't like Juju. I have to get that off my chest. He's seems like a good player. I like him as a person too, but you know, he's not good against man coverage. He's not good against press. His reception perception is kind of scary to think that you draft him as a top 12 receiver if with that outlook. He just doesn't. He never looks good against man. But he is really, really good in the slot when people don't, when the defense doesn't have man against him. So it's kind of just like depends on what defenses do, because he's just elite when he's not being pressed at the line, but he's not good against when he is. So I think he can finish as a top 12 receiver. It depends on how good Big Ben is after this. I think Big Ben will obviously an upgrade over Tuck and Rudolph, but I don't think he'll be special. So there's that, and then it depends on what Deontay Johnson does if he really breaks out, like a lot of people think he will. I like seeing that you're a part of the Miles hype. I don't draft Miles Sanders. I've never been part of the hype train until I started shouting him out because I was just like, dude, this guy was so efficient last year, and he's gonna get more touches than he did last year. So I can definitely see myself jumping onto the hype train. I do like Miles Sanders. How do you feel about Allen Robinson this season in standard? He is seen being drafted in the third round. I don't play standard, but I think Allen Robinson is a good value, probably in the third round. Because he doesn't get the targets that other players get. He's just really efficient. He's kind of like Kenny Golladay or AJ Brown. Is he worth being drafted before Amari Cooper and DJ Moore in standard? I'd draft him before Amari, but I wouldn't draft him before DJ Moore, especially in Dynasty. Where are potential landing spots for Fournette if he doesn't stay in Jacksonville? Tennessee. I don't see that's likely, but that's a possibility. Houston if David Johnson doesn't work out. There's actually a lot of good running backs who are going to hit free agency this year, so there's around. But if Derrick Henry doesn't stay with the Titans, you're going to have like 3 to 6 spots that need a new running back just based on contract, and then you're going to have him compete with Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry, who I think are both better than Fournette. So, yeah. Fournette's possibility of being the same workhorse that he is in Jacksonville and a new contract, I just don't see that happen. I think he could possibly lead a committee and be decent, but I don't think he's ever going to be as important to the offense as he was last year. What round do you usually target quarterbacks? Is Josh Allen worth a 6th round draft pick? I haven't done very many one quarterback drafts recently. I'm not sure about Josh Allen being worth a 6th round draft pick, but in one quarterback, especially in redraft, I'm not worried about quarterbacks. I'm just going to stream. So I draft one in the last 3 rounds. Unless I'm getting insane value on somebody like Breeze or Matt Ryan, then I might draft them a little earlier. You rank Diggs at 16. Does that make you confident in Allen getting the ball to him, considering his accuracy issue? Not really. I think Diggs is really efficient, and I think he's, John Brown is not as good as Adam Thielen. He's not going to steal as many targets. I think he just gets. I think my Diggs at 16 ranking has more to do with like Diggs getting more targets than he did in Minnesota than it does have to do with like Allen getting better. What are your thoughts on Patriots running backs like Michelle and White and Edelman as a wide receiver 2? I wouldn't draft Edelman as a wide receiver 2, and I don't think you have to. I think you can get Edelman as like your wide receiver 4 in the draft at this point, and I'd be really happy with that because you can play him in your flex. I think he'll be good enough to just be a plug and play flex next year. I wouldn't want him as a plug and play wide receiver 1 or 2 though. Yeah, so I actually like Edelman as a value, but not as being great. For Michelle and White, I'm all over White and PP because I think he's going to get targets, and I think he's going to. But I don't like White in standard, obviously, because that doesn't do anything for him. Michelle, you can get him really late, and I mean he has a ceiling that's higher than anyone else you're going to be drafting around there. So I could convince myself to draft him, but I'm not sure I like him because he could get a ton of carries. So it's a possibility that he's good, but so I'd draft him, but I want to feel great about it. I want to be like ecstatic to start see Michelle with him as like my bye week replacement or my yeah. He doesn't make me excited at all, but he's probably worth more than what people are valuing it because he's pretty much dead. Yeah. Why is DJ Moore so high? How do you feel on Curtis Samuel? DJ Moore is high because I think the Panthers are going to throw the ball a lot. Just because I think that's what Rule and Brady have done in the past, and I think that's what they're going to continue to do. And I think Joe Brady's an incredible offensive mind, and I think he's going to get a lot of good passing plays in there. And DJ Moore's just a really talented guy. He probably should have been a top 10 wide receiver, if I remember correctly, last year, if he didn't not play those last 2 games or something. So yeah, he just takes another step in his development. He gets a little bit better. He gets an upgrade at quarterback because Kyle Allen, not very good, but Teddy Bridgewater, at least decent. So that's pretty much why I have DJ Moore. And I've told people this. The DJ Moore is wide receiver 5, and then Tyreek is 6, Galladay 7, Hopkins 8. Any of those guys could end up as the wide receiver 5, or even above that. Like those guys are in a tier, and yeah. So any of those guys could be the top 5, the 5th receiver. But I think Thomas, Godwin, Julio, and Adams are just going to be head and shoulders above everyone else. Just because I think they're all going to have volume and they're all very good players. Will Tajay Sharp do anything for the Vikings? Literally anything. Yes, I guess. He's better than BC Johnson, probably, I think. It depends on how Jefferson is at bat. If Jefferson can be an immediate impact, then Tajay Sharp probably isn't for crap. But if Jefferson takes some time to acclimate, then Tajay Sharp could be decent weeks. I have him on a few dynasty rosters. My hope is Jefferson does take a little time. I mean, it goes off at one point weeks, and then I'm going to split. I don't think he's going to be much. How would you rank the Bengals core after the draft among other teams? From top to bottom, like completely, I really like the Bengals. just the top like 3. It's not as good as a lot of other teams. But yeah, top to bottom, I think they're really good. They have a lot more depth than a lot of teams. And I really like Higgins. That's a little bit of bias because I do kind of know the guy because we're from the same city. But yeah, I do like T. Higgins as a player too. And I like Tyler. I think Tyler Boyd is being a little under. And I think what we saw from John Ross last year is really interesting because he was really good before he got hurt, and I'm not sure whether to trust that or not. So I admire on John Ross just because he played really well with Andy Dalton last year, and now he's got Joe Burrow. I don't know, but yeah, he definitely could be worse. So I'd be willing to take him late. Thoughts on Pittsburgh this year? Seems like the addition of McFarland and Claypool and the potential breakout of Deontay Johnson, along with a potential out on Roethlisberger. Do you think they blow up the team after this? Names I keep hearing rumors of moving are Juju, Connor, and Ben. If they take the out with Ben next year, do you think they go with a vet such as Winston or try to draft a rookie quarterback to take over? Whew, that's a GM question. It depends on how good Roethlisberger is next year, really. If he's just okay, and if they can't win games, but I think winning games for them is going to be about their defense, not their offense, because that defense after they added Minka was just superb last year. So if they win games and they're close, I don't see them blowing it up just because they're close. If they just if they squeak into the playoffs or they don't make playoffs, they're gonna blow it up. Because Connor is injury prone and probably going to be more expensive than you'd want an injury prone running back to be if you want to resign him. And then Ben is old and has some injuries, and obviously there's an out, so that'd be nice to get rid of an old guy who has injury history. So yeah, if they don't make the playoffs, they're blowing it up. And those rumors about Juju are a little weird but I understand because he is going to be very expensive on the next deal because he's only 23 and he has the production to be expensive. So also if Juju doesn't play well and they can get a discount on him, they could keep him if they could get a discount on him, but I don't think they're going to pay him to be. I don't think they're going to pay him like a top 10 wide receiver. But if they can get him as like a top 25 wide receiver, then they'll probably re-sign him. Connor, I don't think Connor's the long-term thing there, especially with like the running back class coming up and rookies and the free agent class next year. The free agent class next year is really good. If any of those free agents end up in Pittsburgh, I'm going to be buying the heck out of them because of Tomlin's usage of one running back. So if like Aaron Jones ends up in Pittsburgh, I would have so many Aaron Jones shares. So yeah, if they do take the out with Ben, do they go with a vet such as Winston or try to draft a rookie quarterback? It depends on how expensive the vet is. If Winston will sign for like 15 mil, I'd imagine they'd like him. But if they can't get it like depends on how good the defense is really. Because if the defense is really good, they have to keep the offense at least trying to compete. So that's my worry is that the defense is really good and the offense kind of stinks, and they don't want to blow it up because the defense is so good. And then they end up having to take, like, if Ben gets hurt next year and misses most of the season, then they take that out on Ben, and they have to sign a vet to keep the defense around. I don't know. It's a weird situation in Pittsburgh because they're always like because they've been like this for a few years. Like since they lost Lev, it's kind of like, are they gonna blow it up now? Are they gonna blow it up later? Because eventually you have to move on from Ben Roethlisberger just because he is like 36 already or something like that, and he's yeah. Obviously, Ben's not a long-term option anymore. Do you see Swift significantly cutting into KJ's touches? Of course. You don't draft a guy in the second round and then not play him. But yeah, I think they'll both be around the same tier. They'll both be okay for this year. Swift has high upside in the future. If Kerryon doesn't make it through after his rookie deal or gets hurt again or something, Swift has really high upside then. But I'm not excited for either one for next year. I ranked Benny Snell Jr. at 73rd. Do you see his yard and carry volumes going up as years go by, or do you think he'll always be a second or third string? For the 73rd ranking, I have Connor playing the full season, which is a possibility, but I don't think it's likely. Benny Snell could be in the 50s if Connor doesn't play the whole season. I do kind of like his upside, just because he is in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's a great spot for running back. It kind of depends on that last question too. If they decide to rebuild and they don't want to sign a running back to be competitive soon, and they want to completely rebuild and wait another season to be good, then Snell could start for a year, and have a chance to prove it to see if he could be the guy in the long term. But I don't think he's going to be great if Connor's around, and I'm not sure he gets the chance to be the RB1 there if they sign somebody else or draft somebody else. Unfortunately, I think he's a decent player. You like Adam Thielen this season? Adam Thielen is projected as wide receiver 23. Obviously, his ceiling's higher. There's so many guys this year where I'm I think they have really high ceilings. And somebody I think Jetpack Galileo tweeted this out earlier. There's 60 guys who are oh, this guy could be a top 24 wide receiver. I feel exactly the same way. There's just a ton of wide receivers right now where I feel oh, they could be really good this year. They could be a wide receiver 2 this year. Adam Thielen obviously has the upside of being a wide receiver 1. We've seen that before. But he's coming out. He was up and down last season, and Justin Jefferson is there. Justin Jefferson's probably a downgrade actually from Diggs, so he probably benefits from Jefferson compared to Diggs. And I don't know how that offense is going to work because Thielen and Jefferson are both best out of the slot, and obviously you can't play two guys at the slot. I hope they ask him why he hates George Kittle. I don't hate George Kittle. But yeah, I like Adam Thielen a bit. I would not want him as my wide receiver 1, but I'd be happy to have him on my team. Stoner and I have talked about that. I actually like Kittle more than Kelsey for Dynasty and just personally, but just the projections shifted that way. And Kelsey and Kittle are 1 point apart on the season for me, so really it's choose whichever one you like more for me. I definitely draft Kittle before Kelsey in Dynasty just because he's younger, but I like them both. He thinks I hate George Kittle, and he's my tight end too. You mentioned earlier that Taylor is your rookie RB1. What makes you rank JT over CEH? College production? Yeah. JT led a backfield for 3 years. He's proved that he's a really good back. CEH had one really great year, and while it was really great, I'm willing to admit that, and he looked good. It's just weird that he didn't do anything before, last year. especially when they were like heavier on the run than they were last year. It's just odd not to see him have any production before his junior year. Obviously, Kansas City is a great landing spot, but I'm not sure if he is ever like a workhorse. And I think Taylor will be. And also, like, Taylor's in a spot where he could get like 300 carries, not just 300 touches, but 300 carries. And CEH is not gonna get that many carries just because he is. Do I take Tua over or Burrow? I like Burrow. Just because of Tua's injury. If they were both fully healthy, I'd rather have Tua. If I could trust them both to play fully healthy or like minor injuries for the rest of their career, I'd rather have Tua. But I'd rather have Burrow just because Tua's injuries. And Burrow, actually, to me, on tape in his junior year, actually showed flashes. I liked his junior year. I thought he was like his junior year going into his senior year. Like I watch a lot of LSU just because like my girlfriend's family is LSU fans, and so I kind of have to like root for them a little bit. And I think like some LSU fans said that before last year, like going into his senior year, that Burrow was one of the best quarterbacks that LSU has ever had. And I don't think that's actually insane. I don't think it's insane because like who else is there? Matt Mettenberger. But yeah, I liked Burrow before the Brady offense took full effect. So I do like Burrow. Distribution of touches within the KC backfield. Let's see. For next year, I actually have Williams playing quite a bit, but for me, it is Clyde with 160 rushes and 55 targets, and then Damian with 135 rushes and 45 targets. So I think Clyde takes over the one role right off the bat, but I think Damian is still around. Why do you have AJ Green ranked so low? If healthy, do you think he can be great, like wide receiver 2 tier? Yeah, if he's fully healthy and he plays the entire season, there's no reason to think he can't be a wide receiver 2. Other than like Burrow has to get like acclimated to the NFL, so there's that. And Zach Taylor, not great in his head coaching debut. The Bengals are an interesting team to watch just because they have so much players that could be great or could be not so great. And a lot of that hinges on Zach Taylor as a coach. And I'm not really sure how I feel about Zach Taylor as a coach. So that's where most of my thoughts are on Cincinnati because it's just kind of a mystery. Do I think Jarvis Landry has a chance of being better than Odell? Yes. He was better than Odell last year, if I remember correctly. Last season, he seemed like Baker's favorite receiver. Obviously, Odell was injured. I know that. But, yeah. I think there's always a chance, and I'd like that chance more in PPR than standard because Jarvis is going to get more targets. Jarvis could get more targets, but Odell's going to probably get more yards just because Jarvis is more of a underneath receiver, than Odell is. So I'd like that chance more than PPR than standard, and but I'd probably only put that chance at like 35 in PPR. I like Odell more if they're both fully healthy, but it's definitely a possibility. I have a lot of Jarvis Landry right now because I keep getting him as like my wide receiver 4, and I'm ecstatic to have that guy as my wide receiver 4 in startups. It's just a steal. I do like him. In a dynasty startup, how would you feel about taking guys like Judy or Rager relatively early, as in top 2 wide receiver on your roster? Do you think these guys produce immediately, or do you think will take a while before they become acclimated. Obviously, they can become acclimated in one season, like Debo, or Slayton or somebody like that. But even them, they're still not acclimated until the second half of the season. Rookie wide receivers almost always do better in the second half than the first half. I wouldn't take any rookie wide receiver as my second wide receiver because it's just a lot of risk. It's a lot more risk than taking a vet there. And you can still get young as a vet there. You could still get like a Cortland Sutton or like Debo, somebody who is young just like them, but also has proven that they're NFL caliber in the NFL. So I don't think I take one of those guys as my wide receiver 2 in a startup. But yeah, I do like Rager though. I like Rager a lot. Rager is my wide receiver 2 actually in the class. I like him over Judy. So that's, yeah. What rookie last year do you think improves the most this year? Also, who do you believe has the worst sophomore slump? It's a good question. Improves the most this year. AJ Brown, maybe. He could get a lot more targets than he did last year, I think, just because he did get better as the season wore on. Geez, I'm not sure if I have to correctly remember which class is which. Yeah, I think AJ Brown would probably be my pick for most improved. Maybe Gardner Minshew, even though it's a quarterback. I think he could be really improved. Looking for running backs. Miles Sanders. Probably Miles Sanders for most improved, just because he gets a lot more. I think he gets a lot more possibility for production, a lot more touches than he did last year. So I think Miles Sanders will be the most improved rookie from last year. Who do you believe has the worst sophomore slump? It's Debo Samuel. I like Debo. I think he's a great player. But the thing that worries me with Debo is that you still have Kittle, obviously, but then they're getting Ayuk and Hurd. And if both of those guys are good, then Debo will probably not get the same amount of target share that he got last year. So Debo is a guy I think that could possibly really disappoint you next year, just because there is a possibility that he doesn't get near the target share he got last year, which would be really scary for him in fantasy, just because the 49ers don't even throw the ball that much to begin with, and then you've got 2 new wide receivers that he's going to compete against. And obviously we don't know if Ayuk and Hurd are good yet, just because we haven't seen them play in the NFL. So, but if they come out and they play really well, then it worries me for Debo. How about Chicago? Yes, I think Foles is better than Trubisky, just off the bat. Trubisky is definitely at risk for losing a starting job. Foles knows all the coaches there. I don't think it's been a little overblown that like Foles won't have time to get ready. But I think Foles will be ready. Yeah, Trubisky isn't very good. So yeah, I think Trubisky will probably start the season. Probably. I've taken them both a lot in Superflex, just because you can get them both really late. Like people will stop drafting quarterbacks after they draft like Rivers and Haskins, and then they just won't take quarterbacks for like 4 rounds. And if you miss the quarterbacks in Superflex, which I often do because I like to wait, then you can get Foles and Trubisky like 3 rounds after people stop drafting quarterbacks. So that's what I've been doing, just because I need that depth. And I think Foles is the guy I'd rather have if I had to pick one of the two. Do you see Antonio Brown ever being a relevant wide receiver again? Golly, this isn't my field. I'm not a psychologist, because if he steps on the field and if he plays, he's a great player. He is like one of the best wide receivers in recent memory by far. But it all has to do with whether or not he can stay out of trouble, which I have no clue. So if you think that he can stay out of trouble and he can start 16 games, by all means, take him, because he will probably be at least a top 20 wide receiver. He's that good of a player, but I don't think he's that good of a human. So I don't think he's going to play 16 games. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have gone over an hour, and I am getting pretty hungry, so we are going to call it a donesie after I read this last question. Do you think Denzel Mims will win the #1 receiving job on the Jets, and what about Ruggs on the Raiders? I don't think Mims will be the one next year. I think Jamison Crowder is the one next year, and obviously Brashad Perriman is a possibility. I'm not sure. I would rather have Mims than Perriman, personally, just because Perriman has been not good for the start of his career. So no, I don't think Mims wins it right away. I think Crowder's pretty good, and Ruggs on the Raiders. I think I actually, I don't like Ruggs just because like the breakout age and all that stuff, just like everyone else. But I wanted to draft Ruggs recently just because I do want to diversify, and I do want the because it is a possibility that he's really good. Like he shows a lot of things on tape that are really interesting. He's really good after the catch. And like you look at his speed and you look at that stuff and you just think that, oh, he gets all these air yards, but he doesn't. He gets a lot of yards after the catch. So I think he's a really intriguing prospect, but I don't like his production profile in general. But at the same time, it is a possibility that it was just that the Alabama receivers were just that good as a whole that he wasn't able to separate, and that still means that he can be good in the NFL just because they did have 4 NFL wide receivers. So it's an interesting proposition with Ruggs. I do like Bryan Edwards though, so I like Bryan. I think Bryan Edwards can be the long-term wide receiver one, personally. So I've drafted a lot of Bryan Edwards just because I think he had a great production profile. He broke out when Deebo was still there, so it's definitely going to be a wide receiver core to watch, because I think any of them can be good next year between Ruggs, Edwards, and Renfro. It is a lot of talking. I am starting to lose my voice. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah. It was a fun time to read a lot of questions and answer them. I also had those plugs in the chat. Yeah, thank you for listening to me talk for an hour and a half, or an hour and 15 minutes. All right, you guys have a good night.